Welcome back to Celebrity Radio. It's Alex Belfield talking to a showbiz pro, an old friend, and a man who tonight will be wowing thousands here at Thoresby. It's nice to talk to Lloyd Hollett. How are you?
I'm good. Good to see you, mate.
It's good to see you. I mean, you've been doing this your entire life, really, haven't you? Entertaining audiences.
Yeah, done nothing else. I think born to perform, they say. Although this is my 30th year in showbiz this year. So spooky, eh?
It's interesting, isn't it? Those who survive and those who don't. What is the key?
I've done nothing else. I think I was born to perform. Even at primary school, I was impersonating Russ Abbott, who was one of my comedy heroes, and getting away with it. And all the teachers loved it. And and even before then, I was kind of the clown. I used to impersonate family members, and when it's in your blood, I think that's, there's nothing else you can do. I did try a 9-to-5 job once, stuck in punnet shelves together in Marks and Spencer's, but I lasted half a day and I just ran home. I did my nutting, and people had been there for like 30 years. I'm like, how are you doing this? So, born to perform.
I first saw you years ago on the road with Jim Davidson, and I have great respect for you, because to walk in front of his crowd particularly, who are expecting him, and then turn it on and give them a show and make them laugh is no mean feat, is it?
No, it's not. And you'd think a comic supporting a comic wouldn't work, but Jim's so level-headed. What I remember, the very first gig I did for Jim was at Rill Pavilion, and he'd not really seen my act. He was recommended to him from Dave Lee, former Dave Lee, who we all love and adore, from Canterbury, passed away not long ago. And I was panicking. I worked with so many other comics over the years that are, let's say, precious about their material and certain subjects. You can't do this, you can't say that. And I said to Jim, because I'm like, oh my God, what if we clash? I said to him, Jim, is there any joke or subject you don't want me to do? And the first thing he said to me, he said, mate, do what you want. If you do anything I do, I just won't do it. and we did 13 tours together, so and that's how it always is. And he's always giving advice. He's so he'd always say, Lloyd, slow down here. I used to run around quite a lot. I used to be quite manic, and I'd sweat buckets when I'd come off stage, and he'd always be, Lloyd, you don't need to run around. He said, keep your feet on the floor. You're a funny guy. And I would try and adhere it, but then a few shows later, he's like, Lloyd, you're still running about. I've noticed. Try glue your feet on the fucking floor. We'll try tonight, And it's amazing how over the years he's changed my act, really, and for the better. Yeah.
And it's beautiful that. I mean, I think he's misunderstood. I love Jim and have done for my entire life. He was very kind to me when I was younger too, not only sparing his time, but also with his advice. There aren't many of those that's worth listening to, are there? Let's face it.
No, absolutely not. And he's one of those people. He is, I always say, he's like a comedy professor who's honing the act, and he knows what he's talking about. Every show we'd do it, I'd come off stage like, he said, that joke you do there? He said, well, instead of saying like that, say it slower. Or say it a little bit faster, or speed up that word there, or take out that word. And I'd be like, Jim, it gets a big laugh. He's like, I know it gets a laugh, but it'll get a bigger laugh, or it'll get a round of applause. And he would always be right. And no, there's not many comedy greats like that anymore. He'd go on stage. Every night is different. His show is different every night. And he'd go on stage and he'd talk about, the last half an hour just before the curtain went up, about me and him walking around the town, going to the fish and chip shop, whatever happened there. And people are laughing in hysterics, thinking that's the act. He does that every night. But it's not. It's just Jim just talking. And I've kind of learnt that trick over the years and it helps, working night after night after night, wherever I'm working. Having that confidence to go out and have trust in yourself, have faith in your personality and your persona and your style. And knowing you can just talk, because I used to be very military. My act was the same A to Z, start to finish, and now it's kind of different every night, because I like having that Jim approach, having a bit of play with it.
And I think probably for you as well. I mean, Jim and Barrymore were the two megastars of comedy on TV when we were growing up. I mean, incredible.
Oh yeah, I mean, I miss those summer seasons. We used to go to Bournemouth every year, and one year Barrymore was the headliner at the BIC and Jim was headlining the Pavilion. And I couldn't see Jim because it was adults only, but I remember seeing Barrymore, and just the buzz, which you don't get anymore because you don't get the summer seasons anymore. The audiences don't fill it, which is so sad. But they were gold times. They really were. I remember being, Barrymore was one of my heroes. I used to nick his act when I was at secondary school, and I'd do it in the assembly every morning in the Easter breaks and the summer breaks, Christmas breaks. And I remember going to see him at Bournemouth and just walking around the whole theatre, the BIC, and finding where the car park was, and then seeing which is his car, and then I'd see like a gold Mercedes with all white one, like that's definitely his, and then when the orchestra would kick in at the top of Act 2, and it's funny, isn't it? Because a lot of acts now, they do as comedy, they do both acts, the Act 1 and Act 2, but there's something rather magical about having a support and then waiting to see whoever you've paid to see.
There's French and Saunders, Anton Decker, Mellon, Sue Mitchell and Webb, Norman Wisdom, Alan Carr, Chubby Brown and Freddie Starr. There's Terry Jones and Jimmy Jones and Milton Jones and Smith and Jones, Davidson and Barrymore and Grayson. He said, shut that door! He says that she swallowed a solid silver Gillette razor blade. Yeah, not only did she give herself an appendectomy, a hysterectomy and a tonsillectomy, but she castrated her lover, took 2 fingers off her bit on the side, gave the vicar a hair lip, and still there were 5 shaves left on the blade. I was telling him I'm thinking of doing a joke about dyslexia. He said, Lloyd, please don't do a joke about dyslexia. He said, we'll get letters. I said, no, you won't.
We just saw you there on stage doing what you do, and it's amazing, isn't it, that you have the confidence to pull it off. To stand on a stage for 45 minutes or do 2 45 minutes is an incredible achievement. How old were you when you realised I can do this and could do it confidently?
Well, the stand-up, when I was at secondary school, yeah, this would have been 1992, I think, and there was a variety show called Cabaret, and I was asked to host it and compare it, and I put together all these jokes that I'd never done before, and just hearing people laugh at the jokes was quite a feast. I remember when I was going back to Russ Abbott again at primary school, and it was 1987 when we had the big storm. The tree fell down in the playground, and we had a couple of days off, which was wonderful. And they re-tarmacked where the tree used to be. It was this big black tarmac in the middle of this huge playground. And when we came back, when we were allowed back in, I always said it looked like a stage. And I always used to, at break time, I'd perform on it. And I would watch Russ Abbott's show on a Friday night, BBC One. I'd retape it on my VHS, I'd rewind it, and I'd find my funniest sketch. I'd get a pen and paper notepad, lock myself in my bedroom upstairs, and I'd play it back and I'd rewrite the script. So Russ said this, and Les Dennis said this, and Bella Emberg said this. And if there were 3 characters, I'd write it 3 times. I wouldn't think to photocopy the bloody thing. And I'd go into school the next day and I would audition. I'd say, come on, right, I want you to be Les Dennis, come here. And I got my mate called Neil Buckley. He was like, well, just learn this, read this. I've got this woman, you could be Bella Emberg. She weren't too happy with that compliment. So we were just mucking about every lunchtime and playtime going over this sketch until we learnt it and it was in our heads. And then Mr. Murphy, my teacher, he said, what are you doing? I said, we're doing this sketch. He said, tell you what, Friday end of class, you can do it.
Wow.
And at the end of class that Friday, I did the sketch, got laughed for the first time, 1987. I was 7 years of age. And it ended up at the end of the year, I had about 12 sketches, songs, variety sketches, all Russ Abbott. And Mr. Murphy said, tell you what, put it together, you can do a one-man show, we'll get the whole school to come and watch. And when I was 7 years of age, I had my first one-man show at Draper's Mills Primary School in Margate. And Mr. Murphy standing on the horseshoe box, the sport thing, and we've still got the tape now. And the confidence, it's embarrassing, really. 7 years of age and did a whole hour.
Do you believe then that you are born to do this? This isn't something that just happens by chance when you can't be bothered to do a proper job?
Well, I've always said that. I think you're born with funny bones. But then I did a gig on Friday night. There were 2 other comics on the bill. One, he said he only decided a couple of years ago he wants to be a comedian. He'd never done comedy, he'd never done anything, not remotely interested, and he was very funny. So, maybe the genes are always there. It's when you flourish. I mean, if it weren't for Mr. Murphy kind of giving me the kick up the arse when I was 7, maybe I wouldn't have flourished for years.
The interesting thing about your career is you're international and you're one of the most respected cabaret artists, but that means you have to go to them. The schlepping about is the tough bit, right? Having to get 3 planes to Bangkok to get on a cruise ship to do 45 minutes.
Yeah, it is. I'm quite fussy now since I became a dad 2 years ago, and I won't really do that anymore. I try not to. I try and avoid it. I'm very lucky because I work for quite a varied line of cruise lines. Fred Olsen are a fine example. Fred Olsen, the ships that I do for them, they either sail from Dover and come back to Dover. And because I live in Margate, Dover's 40 minutes away.
Right.
So it's so joyous. I literally drive there, leave the car. Sometimes my wife can come with me, and my daughter come on a few with me last year. She was 1, and me and my wife went to the fjords with my little daughter.
Wow.
And then we come back to Dover, and it's 40 minutes home, no hassle. And I can't. To be honest, I'm going to the Caribbean in a few weeks, and I've just had the flight details through, and it's 2 flights to Barbados, and then I leave at Heathrow, but I've got to come back to Gatwick. So it's like all of a sudden, oh dear, it's like,
is it worth it?
Well, it's funny, isn't it? And I know that's the norm, and I know so many comics that do that week in, week out, and are used to that style. Maybe I've had it good. I've certainly had it good working with Jim Davidson, like 13 tours with Jim. I've never needed to go abroad, because just working night after night, and especially working with Warner's, which is where we are tonight, Thorsby Hall. They're great, one of the greatest venues in the country, adults only. Doesn't mean you can be vulgar or swear or anything, but there's about 14 of them around the country. So when it comes to a ship now, it's like you've got to be careful which ones you pick, because I know some acts that 3 or 4 connecting flights.
Well, I saw Phil Butler on his Facebook the other day saying it took him 22 hours to get there and back each. I just wouldn't be bothered to do it. God bless him, because if it wasn't for him, we wouldn't be entertained, I suppose.
Yeah, I do feel I've been there. I've been there. I really have. And sometimes if I get a phone call, can you go to the Caribbean tomorrow, or Australia, or for Cunard? Oh, very nice. Yeah, by the way, it's 12 flights. No one else wants to do it. Yeah, they make you feel special. All right, okay, I'll get the short straw here.
And then there's, of course, Panto at the end of the year that you've become a legend in, and you become a Paul Hendy classic that he won't let go. That's a compliment in itself, isn't it? When you become the resident comic and booked year after year by the same producer, it's a great compliment.
It's lovely. Paul Hendy's brilliant. I was always a fan, and he loves variety. When I always used to see Canterbury as a kid, my auntie would take me to see the show every year, and it was about 1996. I saw a big advert in the back of the stage newspaper, and I wrote to Paul, and I sent him my show, and I said, I'd love to work in Canterbury. It was like a dream for me, living in Margate, half an hour up the road. And he rung me back a couple of days later, and he said, I love your showreel. I'd like to come and see you work live. And he lived in North London at the time. He came down to the Burston Hotel in Folkestone, which was a grand hotel at the time. He came with his wife and his family, and it was a great show, thank goodness. A lot of pressure that was. And then he pretty much booked me there and then for not Sheffield, it was Stevenage. And I did my first panto that season for Stevenage. And ironically, people say, God, 70 shows is a long run, or 50 shows is a long run. Can you believe, Alex, we did 111 shows. We opened the 28th of November, closed the 5th of February.
Wow.
With Sheila Ferguson, Stephen Booth,
nice.
And Ben Roddy, ironically, who is the Dame now in Canterbury. He took the mast wonderfully after Dave Lee passed away, and he'd done a few pantos with Dave anyway. He's been the Dame there for many years, and he was in that panto, and we shared a dressing room. I was Idle Jack, he was Captain Crabstick, did Dick Whittington. But once you've done 111 shows, you can do any panto run.
And what pressure is there on you next year to be better than you were this year? I said the same to Matt Slack. I mean, it's all very well being top of the bill at a big theatre, but there is an expectation with that, isn't there?
There's an expectation, but Paul Hendy is brilliant. He sits us down, and he has ideas. He listens to us. He's up for ideas. There's a routine I do in my show tonight, the Can. I recite 135 British comedians in 2 minutes. And when I wrote that a couple of years ago, he liked it so much. He said, we should get something like this in the panto. So we met down in the summer, and we said, let's finish on the Can. And what we'll do, we'll have the best of British. So I sung it, I fronted it at the end of the panto. But we had all the characters coming out dressed as, like, Margaret Thatcher came out. So when I said Margaret Thatcher, Anton Decker, Mel and Sue Mitchell and Webb, each ensemble member was in the wings, and the crew with the costume, the wigs, and Ben Roddy came out as Margaret Thatcher with a handbag, and then he came out as Freddie Mercury with the light crew and all that, and the Hoover, I Want to Break Free, and all that message. And it was like, And then we flew in the national flag at the end. You know, it was just magical. But so he listens. It's not like we've done this 3 years ago, we'll do that again. Let's try and make it fresh, new ideas. And the great thing with Jack and the Beanstalk, you know, it's not always traditional. We did Sleeping Beauty a few years ago, which was not a popular panto as far as traditionally pantos are concerned, but it was such a great seller. And the same with Mother Goose, we just, you know, and everyone that saw it said it was the best panto they've ever seen, even though they don't know the story. They weren't sure about coming to see it because it's not like your Cinderellas or your Aladdins. But if you've got a good show and a nice cast, nice bunch of people, you hopefully destined for success.
I truly think you're the backbone of show business in this country. People like you who entertain audiences around the world and go to them is incredible. And tonight, here we are just outside Nottingham. And tomorrow, where are you? Bombay, Bangkok, Phuket? Where are you?
I've got a few days off. This is my quiet month, actually. Bangkok. No, I'm a few days off. And then Tuesday, I'm at Millwright, which is away resorts. That's on Hailing Island. And then Friday, I'm doing a bistro. And then I'm off to P&O.
All right, stop bragging. You've got a show to do. Lloyd Hollett, thank you so much for your time. You're a great star and a brilliant turn. I look forward to seeing the show. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Alex.
Richard Wilson, oh my God, I do believe it, and Tommy Cooper, not like this, it's just like that, and Frank Carson, it's a crack, I tell you now, and Bruce Forsyth, all right, my loves, it's nice to see you, cuddly toy, now I'm in charge, didn't need a well, give us a twirl, an Englishman, a Scotsman, an Irishman, a Welshman, a Gurkha, a Latvian, a Turk, an Aussie, a German, a Yank, and a Gypsy, and a Jap, a Mexican, a Spaniard, a Russian, a Pole, a Lithuanian, Jordanian, a Kiwi, and a Swiss, a Finn, a Canadian, a Romanian, a Bulgarian, a Jew, a Muslim, a Buddha, and a Hindu, all went into a nightclub, and the bouncer said, you can't come in without a tie. Harrison Demetrius or Freddie Ray or Nicholas, some are really difficult to spell. Tony Blair or Cyril Stump, if they call me Donald Trump, I'd really rather die and go to hell. I told him if he ever got his little Britain out ever again and tried to pull the far show over her eyes, she'd say, good night, sweetheart, and he'd be waiting for God, because she'd get Terry and June, Jeeves the Muster and Steptoe and Son to dig a hole in the ground so fast, he'd have 1 foot in the grave before you could say you rang, my lord. Russell Brand, Bill Bailey, Bradley Walsh, Max Waller, Tommy Trinder, Les Dawson, Ted Rogers, Bob Mancuss, Mike Milligan, Tim Viner, Max Miller, Kevin Bloody Wilson, Frankie Ball and Bernard Manning. He said, well, ARCH is your arch. I, there's your arch, I, BALD, there's your bald, there's your eyeball, there's your arch, eyeball, ARS is your arse, there's your bald arse, there's your eyeball arse, there's your arch, eyeball arse, OL, there's your O, there's your arsehole, there's your bald arsehole, there's your eyeball arsehole, there's your arch, eyeball arsehole. How could I forget Robin Williams, Jim Carrey, Joan Rivers, and David Williams, Barker, Corbett, Bryson, Crawford, Cookamore, and Graham Norton, Bobby Deborah, Brian Conley, Joe Pasquale, Billy Conley, Hammers, Jack D, and Jasper Garrett, Ken Dodd, Jethro, and Russell Howard. But most of all, there's one more me. Good night. Jack Shit was the son of All Shit. All Shit was married to Oh Shit, the farmer and manager of Knee Deep in Shit Incorporated. He had one son and he was called Jack. Eventually Jack Shit married No Shit. They were very religious, spent their lives shagging like rabbits and produced 7 children. Holy Shit, one a shit full of shit bullshit, and the 2 twins, Deep Shit and Dip Shit.